President Obama shaking hands with another world leader today after his historic visit to Cuba, meeting with Argentina's President Maricio Macri, where both leaders expressed their sorrow for the victims of the terror attacks in Brussels.
This comes one day after President Obama wrapped up his trip to Cuba, where he met with Raul Castro, addressed the Cuban people, and spoke with Cuban dissidents. But it's the baseball game he attended that is drawing some criticism.
Our team coverage begins tonight with our colleague Calvin Hughes. He's been following the president's entire historic visit, and he's joining us live from Havana. Calvin.
Lori, the president's words are still resonating with Cubans here on the island, even though he has moved on to Argentina. Here's a look at the state-run newspaper Granma today. The president making the front page, shaking hands with Cuba's leader, Raul Castro. Let's take you now to the American Embassy, where you can see that Old Glory, the American flag, has been lowered to half-staff to remember those victims killed in the terrorist attacks in Brussels, Belgium. Like a lot of the embassies here on the island, the flags have been lowered to half-staff. And you talked about that baseball game that the president attended, sitting side by side with Raul Castro. Yes, the president is getting a chorus of criticism coming from those in Washington. Let's take a listen at how the president defended being at the game and here on the island in Argentina today.
Groups like ISIL can't destroy us, they can't defeat us. They are vicious killers and murderers who've perverted one of the world's great religions, and their primary power, in addition to killing innocent lives, is to strike fear in our societies. It is very important for us to not respond with fear.
Miami Congressman Carlos Corbello was one of the first to criticize the president's visit here, saying that his speech yesterday did not go far enough. Well, today, Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen had these words for the president. Take a listen.
This continued effort to legitimize this regime and its atrocities is appalling. It's appalling for those people who love freedom. It's appalling for those who have been political prisoners in Castro's gulags. It's appalling for those families who have lost their loved ones because of this communist regime. Today is a sad day indeed, and this poster says it all. Smiling in front of Che Guevara, get the T-shirt now. Mr. Speaker.
Now, in the president's speech, he talked about economic reforms coming to Cuba and a new day coming to Cuba as well. And those words really had an impact on Aleda Rodriguez, a woman I talked with today who calls herself a communist but says she now questions everything she's ever learned. The streets of Havana are back to normal a day after the president's history-making visit to Cuba.
Today, as the President of the United States of America, I offer the Cuban people el saludo de paz.
And Obama's speech marked a high point for his 2 days spent on the island.
I want the Cuban people, especially the young people, to understand why I believe that you should look to the future with hope.
Most Cubans we spoke with called the president charismatic and confident as he called for change in Cuba. But the words of Aleda Rodriguez were unique. She's a revolutionary who now questions everything she's ever known. She says, after analyzing things, I have come to realize I have lived many years of lies, fooled, because the things that are happening now, I was always told the contrary. Rodriguez says she wants to see a new day in Cuba. This gentleman has taken steps for the future, she tells me. Hopefully, one day, I may never see it, but the Cuban people will benefit greatly from it. Aleda Rodriguez, so brave to talk with us today. I'm joined by my colleagues now, Hatzavella and Victor Akindo. We've all been covering the president's every step here over the 2 days, and then, of course, now the day following, now that he's gone, and the words of the president really sinking in all across the country. I want to get some final thoughts. I'll begin with you, Victor Akindo. What are your thoughts after your second trip here and what you thought the president's trip meant to those here locally?
Well, before this trip, we all knew that the president was already very popular on the island, but now I think it's at just another level. From every single person that I've talked to on the island, ever since his big speech, the way that they describe him, they are just almost enamored with him right now. They call him very charismatic. They thought he's very intelligent. He knows how to speak with people. One thing I want to mention that I did find interesting, though, you just mentioned the newspaper today. Yes, he was on the cover, but twice in it, They wrote about the fact that he used a teleprompter during his speech. They were very interested in the fact that he used one of those transparent teleprompters that on the island you don't see too much of. So they were very, very fascinated by that.
Very insightful comments, I thought, this morning, too. It was interesting that you and I discussed this over breakfast, that this morning we saw the rerunning of that news conference where it was that very awkward moment between Raul Castro. But guess what was edited from that news conference? Yes, the question from CNN reporter Jim Acosta and that awkward moment with the president and Raul Castro. Your final thoughts, considering that you have traveled the entire island?
You know, you talk to a lot of people talking about that speech and what he said. Folks here in Cuba talking, saying it was inspirational, it gave them hope. But at the end of the day, one of the cab drivers told me it's going to be a wait and see game.
Yeah. You know, I know my producer won't like me for asking a second question here, but do you think change is on the way, or it's going to be a while before we see it, Victor?
The Cuban people absolutely hope so. That's what I can tell you here. And that's what this whole trip was really about for them, instilling a lot of hope and belief and letting them know that it's okay.
Okay.
You know?
Very quickly from you, Hatzel. What do you think?
We'll be here to cover those changes.
Yeah.
That's one thing for sure.
That's right, absolutely. And, you know, the president made one final stop before leaving the island. This was a very funny moment. Take a look at where he stopped before leaving here and going to Argentina.
No se parece Obama, es Obama.
The real Panfilo.
Oh,
Mucho gusto.
The real Obama. 1, 2, 3 y Obama, Obama, qué bueno que viniste.
The president stopped there before coming here and leaving the White House, and then there he goes again, speaking a little Spanglish and hanging out with the popular Cuban comedian.
This guy is hugely popular here in Havana, and we saw him a couple days ago, right, when he called from the White House and he told them, hey, I'm coming. Well, now he's here. He actually went on the show, spoke Spanish. They played a little dominoes. It was amazing. Obviously, the president there, though, using comedy to really focus and get the attention, not just of any Cuban, but all of Cubans who watch this show so profoundly.
If you had any doubts, Victor, about the president trying to reach out to the younger generation, that probably just sealed it for a lot of people.
And let's not forget, people back home in the United States will no doubt be watching that too. The image of him just taking off his suit jacket, resting on the chair, and hopping in there, learning how to shuffle all the dominoes. Perfect.
And the president once again said, "Que bola." So there you go. He said, "What's up?"
And you said it right.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I've been working on that. All right. Now, coming up at 11 o'clock tonight, we're going to show you the restaurant where the president ate in central Havana at San Cristobal. It was an incredible experience, not only for those waiters who waited on him and who served him, but the owner as well. He's had 5 other presidents come there to visit, not to mention Jay-Z, Beyonce, Roberta Jacobson, the chief negotiator for the U.S. government, Mick Jagger back in October. So even Jimmy Buffett came to visit him there. So this owner has only been in business for some 5 years, and to have all of those superstars, entertainers, and the president, even Barack Obama, come there with the first family, it was truly a dynamic and incredible experience for him. We're going to talk with him coming up at 11 o'clock. We hope to see you then. Lori and Janine, I'll send it back to you.
It is happening in incremental levels, but there are signs of change.
Love hearing that female cab driver's mindset, which has been so changed. No longer the evil U.S. Calvin, that was fascinating. We'll look for your report at 11 o'clock tonight. Gentlemen, thank you.